Good morning and welcome back to Topics and Tangents here on Gaming with ADHD. We are here again with Jason Hardy, who is now like literally the most frequent guest on the show, even though he only shows up like once a year at this point. But anyways, good morning, Jason. How you doing?
Just fine. How are you? How is lovely, nice, and cool temperate Arizona?
It is only 101 right now.
Oh, nice.
at 7 p.m. Actually, I'll be honest. 101, I would take that. That is perfectly fine. I have zero issues with 101.
Compared to 115, you bet.
Exactly. So, anyhow, but yeah, so like, yeah, what's been going on? What is new with Jason?
Well, there was this whole thing last week.
Did something happen last week?
Companies got together and sold games.
Was this a secret meeting?
It was secret. We did not tell anyone about it.
You didn't tell maybe 70,000 people to show up at the same time?
You had to be in a select group of 70 to 80,000 people.
Fair enough. Okay. Have you recovered from this secret meeting yet? No.
I meant to, because I was going to take like Tuesday and Wednesday off because I didn't get home till Monday. And I was going to take Tuesday and Wednesday off, and then people to keep throwing issues at me. Oh, wait, you need to take care of this. You got to take care of this. Oh, wait, this came up.
So almost like you're a line developer.
Yeah. Well, there were also people who I would expect to take the day off too. One of them was a Shadowrun art director, and he was texting me about stuff, and I said, I'm taking today off. And he said, I was trying to too. And I said, so do it.
Of course, the big question is, how did you get out of tearing down the booth?
I didn't get out of tearing down the booth. What are you talking about?
I thought you guys didn't do that till like Monday or Tuesday.
No, that'd be great. No, we do it Sunday night.
Oh.
Exhibit hall closes at 10, and we were there until 10. We had most of it done. Just had some pallets to wrap and a few other things. So I was back in there at 9 o'clock on Monday. Wrapped a pallet jacked a little bit, and then at that point we were in good shape at around like noon, 11:30 or so. So I got
that's not too bad.
And then packed up the hotel room. And
got it. Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and do this. This is new for me, folks, but we're going to introduce Dylan Birtolo to the stream. Good morning, sir.
Good morning or evening or whatever time zone it is.
Well, I'm in Arizona, and so I believe you're up in the Seattle area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes, I am.
Yeah, so we're at the same time right now, but it doesn't matter what time of day it is. I just say good morning, and let me tell you, it's works. Even funnier in the grocery line when the cashier, who's just completely out of it, yeah, and I'm like, good morning, and they're like, wait, what just happened? So that's kind of how I roll. Anyway, so we're just talking. Yeah. Anyhow, so all right. So we literally were just getting started. We were talking about Gen Con. How was Gen Con for you, Dylan?
Gen Con was amazing, and my voice has actually recovered in time for this interview, which is probably a good thing because I sounded like I had strep throat or something. It was very, very, it was a sign of a good con, but it's harsh on the throat.
Got it.
It was pretty rough on Sunday for you.
Oh yeah. It's always funny for me whenever I've been to Gen Con, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's like, you're just like, yes, more, give me more. This is awesome. Like I'm excited. Let's just keep going all week long. And then Sunday morning rolls around and you're like, get me out of here before somebody gets stabbed.
I always feel bad for the people who like show up after noon on a Sunday, and that's the only time they could come in. So they walk in the exhibit hall, and all the exhibitors are just The Walking Dead and glaring at them. Why did you come here?
Please, we're just take what you want, pay for it, and just get out.
If you take inventory, we may forgive you. That helps. But other than that, go away. Just kidding. We love our public.
Yeah. No, oh no, I totally don't think that you don't like the public. But again, I having just been there, like I totally get having to just deal with just all of that, and you're just like, all right, because then you also have to arrange the truck, and you have to get on the dock, and then you have to make sure that everything's loaded properly, all that kind of stuff. So totally get it. So all right, so Dylan, I know Jason. I've known him for a few years now. Why he keeps putting up with me, I'm really not sure. But
do you give him a hard time? Because he tends to like people who give him a hard time from what I see from all of his personal interactions.
So I don't think so. I don't think I give him a hard time, but that's also because I will message Jason at like weird time. I mean, I work nights normally, so I'll message him at like, first thing in the morning. He's barely gotten up, whatever. And it's like, okay, I think it's now safe to send a message where it won't wake him up or anything. And then he's always just like, oh yes, here is answer to your question. And it's like, oh, thanks. So I've tried not to annoy him, but tell us about you, because I have no idea who you are outside of the thing we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Even though you're very prominent and famous and stuff. Rest assured, just so you know.
So hi, my name's Dylan. I wasn't always a game designer. I originally was. The way that I got into game design is actually all of Catalyst's fault. I was and still am a Shadowrun and BattleTech author, and I had this cool idea for a game that I thought would be awesome and amazing, and it was specifically around how corporations worked. And since I knew the folks at Catalyst, I brought it over to them, and I was like, hey, what do you think of this game? And they were like, wait, what is this? And so I showed it to them. They were impressed. It didn't actually become a game. It's still in kind of my backlog. But it impressed them enough that they were like, hey, what would you do if we asked you to design a Shadowrun specific board game that kind of focused on the runners? And I was like, well, let me get back to you. And I developed a game that eventually became Shadowrun Sprawl Ops, which is just out of screen on my camera over there. And that was my first game that I sold. And from there, I've just found that I really have a knack for game design. I really enjoy it. At the risk of making the camera all shaky, like I've designed several games at this point. That's kind of like my personal shelf of designed games. And it's just something that I love to do. Like I can't get enough of it.
All right. Have you always been a gamer? I mean, how'd you get into gaming?
The story told in my family is that I used to, when I was way too young to understand what it was, creep down out of my bed when my dad would stay up late with some of his friends playing backgammon and go crawl into his lap and roll the dice and try to move the pieces, which I'm sure was great for his backgammon game. Especially since they were actually playing for money. I'm sure that was well received. But yeah, I've been a gamer pretty much my whole life.
Nice. Yeah, I've got a similar story to that, although not me doing it, but my son. We were playing D&D, and he was like 2 or 3 years old. Okay. And we were in our apartment, and all the guys would come over, and I had this buddy of mine. He had no kids. He'd been married for like a decade, and for some reason my son just attached to him. And so they'd come over to play, and he'd just like hang out with him and sitting on his lap, and we're all sitting there, and we've got the battle mat out and the monsters on the table, and this little 3-year-old boy gets up and picks up the miniatures. He's like, oh, this guy's gonna kick this guy's ass. And we're like, well, then that just happened. So I can totally relate to your story about, just got to get into the games. So
I think I was just going to say, I think that the first 2 games I remember actually playing, one was Othello, and the other one is Crossbows and Catapults, which just had like a reprint, updated release, and like major nostalgia value looking at that.
Oh, Restoration Games, I will admit, looking at almost anything from then, you're like, oh, I feel 8 again. And and that would be awesome, but is also not in my budget. So
at Gen Con, we were right in front of Renegade Games, and they had their reissues of Robo Rally, Acquire, and Diplomacy in the booth. So I was getting back to some good teenage years.
Oh yeah, no, those are like Renegade as well. Like, Renegade is the one that confuses me the most, because they have all of these Hasbro licenses where Hasbro already has their game design, arm. Like, well, A, Hasbro Gaming, and then B, Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, we're gonna license it over to these people. It's like,
but that they're doing the Avalon Hill games too, which WotC has.
Right. Well, I always kind of assumed that the Avalon Hill stuff is now just kind of like a brand as opposed to like an actual design house, but maybe that's just me. But anyhow, all right. So you did Sprawl Ops, which I have not played it yet. I'll get there. I'm bad at this.
My disappointed face.
When don't you have a disappointed face with me, Jason? I mean, come on. Not often? You sure about that? Anyways, so all right. Well, you know what? I think we're just gonna jump into it. Okay. First off, who came up with Takedown? I'm gonna start that way.
So
that's a long story, but go for it.
That is a very long story. Takedown actually predates me. I was not part of the original design on Takedown. So I'm part of Lynvander Studios. And they had a game that they originally developed. I actually think that they were pitching it at the same time I was pitching Sprawl Ops.
Yeah, I demoed it before COVID, certainly.
Yeah, so it's an old game. It was it was under a different name, and it was shown off to the Catalyst folks, and they liked it. But then it kind of got shelved for a while, and it got put on hold. And it eventually, once it went through several iterations, became Takedown. So the core idea, I believe, was the brainchild of Josh and Tommy. But I couldn't swear to that because it was before my time.
Okay.
Josh Dirksen and Tommy Gofton of Lynvander.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Jason, for covering me.
So they had the initial idea. So did they pitch it to you, Jason, or did you kind of have an idea?
Yeah, they ran it for us a couple of times. I know I played it at least twice at Origins in like successive years, but that was before Dylan got his hands on it and polished it up very nicely.
Okay, so then tell us what Takedown is. I mean, I know because I've looked at it, but I mean, for those who don't know yet.
So Takedown is the short version is it is a cooperative dungeon crawler style game set in the Shadowrun universe.
I'll put out a document I'm working on and just read this.
Everyone watching on their phones, I'm assuming, totally just saw that.
Yeah, and that's what you want a video for. You want a video to have lots of dense text for people to read.
Exactly.
I'm just waiting for someone to pause it and scribe all of that.
It'll be released to them soon enough in an edited format. But anyway, go on. I interrupted you.
I'm used to it. It's all good. So the premise behind it, like I said, it's a dungeon crawler in the Shadowrun world. The things that make it somewhat unique, because there's a lot of dungeon crawlers out there. So for me as a gamer, I have literally hundreds of games and have played over 1,000 different games. So for me, it's always what makes a game different, because there's a lot of dungeon crawlers out there. And the two things that make Takedown a little bit different is, one, there is a timer. And that timer is incredible in how it changes the flow of the game. When I was running demos, Jason played in 2 of them. I always let people play without the timer for the first turn, and then I introduce the timer. And I mean, Jason, I'll let you share for your thoughts on the difference between the 2.
Yeah, the stress level absolutely goes up. Without the timer, you carefully plan, you give and take. Maybe you waste some time, pull out, plotting all sorts of different ideas, rejecting ideas. With the timer, you can't reject a whole lot. You got to speak efficiently, move quickly, pass the action piece back and forth to make sure that the right person can act at that time. And it's a whole different level of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, typically with a dungeon crawl, especially because this is fully cooperative, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so especially with a cooperative, you always kind of end up with that alpha gamer. They're just going to be the one. Okay, you go here, you do that, and essentially it's a 1-person game. They're just letting other people roll the dice. So to me,
we call that quarterbacking.
Right, quarterbacking, alpha gamer. I mean, all sorts.
Yeah,
of
it's the same thing.
Yeah. But I can see adding in a timer mechanic where, oh no, we've got 30 seconds. If you don't know what you're doing,
So in just for context, each player has up to 5 actions and a base movement on their turn.
Okay. That's a lot of things to do.
You can have 3 players running. Actually, you can have 4 players running at once. In a best case scenario, you have 2 minutes for everybody to do their turn. And only one person can go at a time.
Okay.
And you're not allowed to discuss strategy when the timer's not running. So there's really no room for a quarterback.
No, right, but that's kind of what I was saying. I can see how that, because again, that quarterback mentality, a lot of people hate the co-op games because there's going to be the quarterback, and it's like, I'm not going to have much to do. So where was it your idea to add the timer, or has that always been in the game?
So the timer has always been there. But we changed over the last year or so. I don't remember the exact time frame, but we all got together, and so I can't really say any of it is like my idea versus the entire team's idea. But we all got together and we spent a couple of days pretty much just working on Takedown, trying to figure out what it was missing. The timer originally was in there because it was everybody was moving at the same time, and we wanted to introduce a chaos factor. But what we changed it to was the mechanic of the timer is now not, hey, you flip it when you run out of time, it's done. It's you flip it and it's a 30-second timer. And you have to keep flipping it before it runs out of sand, because if it ever runs out of sand, your turn's over. So if you forget to flip it, you have 30 seconds to do all of your actions.
Okay. Wait.
Now, I realize that sounds even more chaotic and more strange, but the reason why we did this is the second part that kind of sets Takedown apart from other dungeon crawlers that I've played, which is we have what is called a mastermind. So if you've ever seen the television, have you seen the television show Leverage?
I have not.
It is an excellent show, especially if you like Shadowrun. I highly recommend it. But it's about a team, and in the team, everybody but one person usually goes inside, and then one person stays outside and has like the screens and the floor plans and all that information and is telling the people inside what to do. And we wanted to capture that feeling. So there is actually one character who sits outside and has a map of the mission and knows what guards are going to spawn where, and is telling people, no, don't go that way. You want to go this way, or you should really try to achieve this first. And is basically giving all of this advice and has unique special powers that they can use. One of the ways that we keep that person on their toes so that they feel pressure is they're responsible for flipping the timer. So in addition to absorbing the map and relaying this information, if I'm the mastermind, I also need to be keeping an eye on the timer because I'm the only one who can flip it.
Okay, interesting. So, so with the game, was it always kind of envisioned as being part of the Shadowrun universe, or was it just kind of a generic thing at first?
It was originally designed as a cyberpunk dungeon crawler, not necessarily Shadowrun. But obviously, if you say cyberpunk and you're friends with Catalyst, you think Shadowrun. So.
Sure. And so, Jason, what did you think when they brought this to you and said, "Hey, we should do this Shadowrun game"?
The immediate appeal of it was that it did a really good job of using team-based tactics so that you would have specialists in their classic Shadowrun areas. You know, in the game right now, you've got generally Street Samurai and a Mage and a Face and a Decker, and each of them has an important role to play, and each of them needs to make sure they're paying attention to the thing they do well so that the other person can do their thing well. And so the fact that it accentuates that kind of team tactic is very Shadowrun, and I really liked that you have to work together that way, and you have to be smoothly working together in that way. You have to know each other, where you want to go, where the other person is supposed to be, and try to react quickly enough to make that happen. So that felt very Shadowrun to me.
Okay. And I guess so then I guess another question would be right now it's very much scenario based, correct? So like it's gonna have, I'm assuming it's gonna have like its own, you know, scenario mission book, you know, everything laid out. To me, there's always kind of a problem that, you know, essentially that kind of locks it in. These are the scenarios that you can play. How does this, like, well, okay, let me back up a little bit. Are those scenarios designed to be played in order, or are they just more like one-offs and you can kind of pick and choose which one you want to do?
Both. So we're designing the campaign. We realize that some people are going to want to play the campaign because the campaign has a huge appeal. But we also realize that some gamers want to just have some friends over and just play a game, play one, and then be done with it, and put it away until the next time you're going to play. So the way that it's set up is we have a large collection of scenarios that you will be exposed to through the story of the game, because it is a branching story. So you're going through the campaign once, there's no way you're going to see all of the possible scenarios. We also, on every scenario, have a description of how to level up and prepare your characters if you're running that scenario as a one-off. So, because the scenarios are specifically designed assuming that you have done a fair amount of upgrades, you've gotten some gear and things like that. And so we put all that information in the header of the scenario so you can just sit down, pick out any scenario you want and say, hey, I just want to play this one tonight.
Okay. So, I mean, it almost sounds like you're sort of designing, you know, a Shadowrun campaign. I mean, as dumb as that sounds, I mean, like it sounds like you're kind of giving people, you know what, I'll put it this way, a GM-less campaign.
I don't think that's entirely wrong. It was funny at Gen Con, we were demoing games of this, and one of the demo agents who was learning it, she said that the moment she fully got what was going on with the game was when she just thought of the phrase, this is Shadowrun in a box. So it is Shadowrun. It's a role-playing game of Shadowrun, but just in a single box so that you can have the campaign and you can run it quickly and easily, a little quicker than you would a role-playing game. So without some of the options that the role-playing game has, but still you're getting the Shadowrun experience just in a box, and that helped her conceptualize the game pretty easily.
Okay. And so then I guess that's another question. Are there plans on making ways to customize the campaign? Like whether you ways to make your own scenarios, or theoretically expansions with more campaign books. I don't know. I'm spitballing here.
So obviously I can't speak for Catalyst with regard to expansions and whatnot. That is squarely a Catalyst question, and I don't want to say something that I shouldn't. What I will say though is
job to say things I shouldn't.
But what I will say is that one of the things that we really, really want to do at Lynvander with our games and all of our games is we want to make sure that we create experiences that people enjoy. And one of the things that, like, we're very active on the BGG threads for our games, and people will be like, hey, I designed this custom content for it. Like, I created this new character. Are you okay with it? And we're like, sure. So Lynvander is fully supportive of, like, people get the box and they want to design their own scenarios and whatnot. Go for it. Have fun. I'd love to see it as a gamer. Like, I think it would be cool.
Okay. So Glenn asks, how long is the campaign?
In the box, it will be about 15 missions.
Okay.
But as stretch goals, right now, we've already unlocked 3 extra side quests that we'll throw in, and more will be coming as new stretch goals, because we need to add some stretch goals because everyone already passed the stretch goals we have. So nice work.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, my favorite.
I'm actually going to add a small addendum to what Jason said, because I think that it's important for people to know. We deliberately wanted this to be a game that if you took a day, you could just set it up and go through the entire campaign. And so the individual campaign itself, from beginning to end, is going to be about 6 missions. So there will be 15 included. This is where I said you won't see all of them based on the choices you make. But if you sit down and play it and say, we're going to play the whole thing through today, it's going to be about 6.
Okay, so you'll have like mission 1, and then depending on whether the runners get the data packet or kill the target, whatever it is, then you're going to branch into the next mission, and then that's going to branch into a different one, I'm assuming. Yes? No? Maybe? Kind
of like that. It's more, we didn't want to, and there's game design reasons why you don't want to do this, and I don't want to bog down the chat too much with that. But we do require you to complete the mission. So if you don't complete the mission, you should run it again. Or you can just say you completed it. We're not going to tell you how to play. Well, we will in the rule book, but you know what I mean.
Stop judging me, Dylan. I'll play the game how I want.
But like at the end, you're going to be presented with a choice of, like, I don't want to give any spoilers, but hey, you did the thing. Now what are you going to do with it? Are you going to hold true to what you said you were going to do? Or are you going to do this other thing that might be more tempting? And yes, I'm being deliberately vague. It's because I don't want to give spoilers.
That's perfectly fine. Let's see. Oh, I do want to. We're gonna kind of small interruption actually, and I think they'll kind of tie together. Because I did post my review on the new Berlin edition book. Jason, Paul in chat wants to know when the Berlin edition is supposed to be hitting store shelves.
Either September or October. It is on a boat right now. I forget exactly when the boat's supposed to arrive. I think it's supposed to arrive later this month. So it depends on how quickly they turn it around from the boat to the warehouse to the stores. So it could be late September, might be October.
Got it. Okay, so then that's going to tie in. So we've got Shadowrun 6th World, brand new core book coming out soon. Does Takedown hook into the 6th World meta plot, or is it all kind of self-contained on its own?
No, it will hook into the 6th World meta plot. If you look at the cover, and I believe Hal asked this very early on in the chat. Hi, Hal. Where he said, what is wrong with the orc on the cover art? What is wrong with the orc on the cover art of Takedown is he's actually Dissy and Chimera, if you've been reading up on some of the meta plot. especially those of you lucky enough to get scotophobia at Gen Con. You'll be all informed about that. And so this will tie into the DIS plot that has been going on through Cutting Black and Slipstreams and Whisper Nets and onward. Scotophobia is a big kind of buildup of this plot, and there will be a second book out in late 2024 to kind of wrap up that plot. So Takedown should come out right in the middle of this plot being at its peak, and it'll tie into that.
Got it. Stupid browser. Got it. Okay. I will find. I'll find that picture later. Okay. So then. Okay. So how does Takedown, hook into those plot devices? Do we have specific stories that are talking about some of the stuff going on in the Six world, or is it just going to be more
spoilers? But it will be some of the corporations that are trying to figure out where they are aligned in the DIS situation, trying to figure out how runners can help them, and also trying to figure out what side they should take.
Okay. That is actually something that I had not actually considered, and I'm finally able to do this. Look, there we go.
There's that work. He's got some dental problems. And also a little tentacle thing going on.
I mean, just a small tentacle thing.
Yeah.
Or a few small tentacle things.
I mean, which of us haven't gone to the doctor with a minor case of tentacles? It's
so.
I mean, you say he's got dental problems, but the teeth all look clean to me.
That's right. They are nicely organized in rows. I don't think he needs an orthodontist at this point.
No, but that jaw looks uncomfortable.
So then who was responsible for writing the scenarios? Dylan, did you create the scenarios, or did Jason kind of like, nope, you're doing it this way?
Because of just the way that things unfolded on this project, I am designing all of the mechanics for the scenarios and what is happening, but I actually don't know the story at all.
That's because Tommy wanted to take a crack at writing it. So since Tommy runs Lynvander and he decided he wanted a crack at it, we gave Tommy a crack at it, and then I will supervise him, or he'll supervise me. We'll watch each other.
And it's only slightly awkward. So what was your biggest challenge then, I would say, Dylan, in putting this together? What did you struggle the most on?
Chaos.
Our biggest challenge. What was that, Jason?
Chaos of the past few months.
I mean, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here.
No, but there has been chaos.
This is a safe place. Your bus chucking is totally allowed, especially if it's Jason.
So honestly, the biggest challenge for us was trying to find, when I said the team did our hardcore design dive into the game for like a couple of days. The game always felt good, but it didn't feel great. And it didn't feel special. And we were trying for a long time to figure out what that missing element was. And I think that was honestly the hardest part of it. And really the whole mastermind mechanic is what we came up with, that when we got that and when we started working it and then cleaned it up a bit, we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is what it was missing. This gives it that nice little spice. So it's not like the same flavor rice as like all the other games out there.
I was going to say, because dungeon crawls are always fun. I really like them. I'm bad at getting them to the table, but yeah, they all kind of end up feeling the same. It's very rare when you get something, like I'll throw this one out, crap, I can't remember the name. It's from Mantic. League of Infamy, where like technically you're playing the bad guys. And so it adds in like a chaos mechanic. So finding that way to make it feel special is absolutely key. I totally agree there.
I think one of the things that stood out for me just about the mastermind mechanic that Dylan's talking about is he first described it to us in a meeting several months ago. And I remember some of the other people at Catalyst were a little dubious, saying, I'm not sure that's what we want to see in this game, because they didn't understand how the mechanic worked. And
Not Jason, though. He never doubts me.
No, I was like, if Dylan did it, it's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. So they arranged to do an in-person play test. And right after that play test, when I, got a follow-up and got notes and said, okay, how close is this to being done? How much work are we going to have to do? Randall, who play tested it, was like, oh, no, this is fine. This is excellent. This is pretty much ready to go. So he had totally switched on that from being a little dubious to the mechanic to say, no, this is ready. This game is good. We should get it out there. So it definitely sold him on it in the gameplay.
And it's a hard mechanic to explain, because like when you try to explain it, like it really people are like, oh, so you're not playing the game, you're sitting out and you're just kind of watching it. And when you just explain it with words, it gives that impression, which is why we're trying to be very, very careful about the language that we're using. But as Jason can attest, when you're playing it, you are doing a lot as the mastermind. You're not just sitting there watching. You are doing a lot and a lot of juggling and stuff like that.
It's being Overwatch on a run where Overwatch is very much needed.
And how many people are like also look at it, and because like I'll be honest, when I saw the okay, I'll admit I did not see all of the playthroughs from Gen Con, because A, I wasn't there, and B, I fell asleep. It's not your fault. Again, I work nights. But one of the things that, like, when you were talking about it, in my brain, because I didn't watch how the whole game played out, I kind of thought it was supposed to be like a GM kind of a thing. So now you have you're selling it as a co-op, but no, we have this one person kind of controlling things. And how many people make that mistake?
A lot, but one of the best ways to sum it up, and I don't remember who said it, but someone said it from one of the streams or something, or one of the demos, said that it's like the dungeon crawlers that have the GM role, like they have the person running the dungeon, but he's on your side. Because usually in most of those games, you're planning on where to put the monsters and whatnot to stop the heroes and stop the other players. But this time, you're on the same side. And so it kind of flips it a little bit that way.
Well, yeah. Just to give two quick examples from the games I played at Gen Con. The first one, we left, because we're very smart people, we left the Street Samurai in the van and went in without a Street Samurai. But it still was handy, because every character has a special ability they can use on Overwatch. And the Street Samurai had the ability to assassinate one guard once per game. And so there was one room where we really would have been messed up if there was an extra guard there. But Dylan used his ability to kill a guard there, so that made it a lot easier for us to get through. We still struggled a lot on that game. We only got out because at the end we had him finally come out of the van, storm in, carry us out basically, and we got out. And then the second game, he was the face in the van, because that's much more logical. And the ability that he had there was that as long as we got the action token back to him in time, he could move an enemy away from us. And so he did that a few times to keep enemies away, or even keep them from spotting us. And so that was really useful to have him doing that sort of Overwatch, and then making sure people were staying away. So it was a very useful role to play.
Okay. How many different roles are available in the game?
So there are currently 7 roles in the game, but there are some roles that are represented multiple times, because different characters have different stats. So you might have the same role but have a different stat. The roles that are available are Street Samurai, Adept, Decker, Brigger, Mage, Shaman, and Face.
Okay. Are there plans to add more of those? Or we're just going to keep it to those 7?
In the current Kickstarter campaign, there are not plans to add more of those.
Okay. I think that's a good mix. I mean, that's going to give most Shadowrun players the ability to be like, okay, I always like playing the rigger. Okay, there's a rigger in there. So I asked questions.
And we didn't have the rigger on stream, but the rigger gets to throw out a drone, and then the drone can move around and get enemies' attentions and draw them to places. And later on in the game, you can upgrade it to, I think, either a stealth drone that can like pick locks or a combat drone that can attack people.
Oh, fantastic. So you can be stuck in the van and still on the table.
Oh, the rigger's special ability is if they're the mastermind, they get to release their drone into the map.
Got it. Okay, that's actually really cool. And so just to clarify, Jason had said all of the different roles. Yes, the different. I don't know why I forgot. Each of those has a different mastermind ability, right? Does it?
Yes.
And how many different versions of each of the types of characters are there? Do you get like 2 of each, or is it just whatever you'd fit in the box? Or
I mean, that'll partially depend on stretch goals, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see the next round of stretch goals. I can't remember of all the things we discussed which ones are on the next round.
Okay. If there's a duplicate type, so say you have 2 different rigger characters, are they going to have different mastermind abilities, or is it just going to be like, oh, you're a rigger, this is the mastermind ability you get?
The mastermind abilities are tied to the role, so those aren't going to change from one character to another. There are some stats that change, like for example, health, movement speed, how much gear you can carry. The big thing that changes between 2 characters of the same role is we use a keyword-based system on our characters. So every character has 3 keywords, and you can only use the majority of the equipment has a keyword requirement, and you can only use it if you have the keyword. For example, there is a item in there that lets you put explosives on a wall and breach a wall. But in order to use it, you have to have the character who has the demolitionist keyword. If you don't have demolitionist, you can't use that item.
Okay. Then I had a question and I completely blanked on what it was. I'm a complete professional at this, I swear. You know what? Glenn actually brings up a really good point. So one of the things that I was actually most excited about was one of the first stretch goals was the miniatures. Have those been designed yet, or is that something that's going to be coming later?
They are in process right now, so we should have at least some previews to give before the Kickstarter ends. We've got a really good team, actually. We're really excited to get this team working on miniatures, so they are working hard. When I mentioned urgent emails that kept me from taking the past 2 days off, that was one, saying we really need to get some miniature previews. So we are working hard to get miniature previews as quickly as possible.
I mean, but it's Catalyst Game Labs. You're not really known for putting out miniatures.
No, we have only done a few million in the past couple of years. So we'll have to squeeze these in somehow. Yes, our miniature production capabilities have greatly improved in the past 5 years.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I mean that would actually be another question. Are you going to I want to pull it out because I want to brag a little bit. Are you going to reuse the prime runners, or are these all new miniatures?
These will be all new. Since we already used the prime runner miniatures, we want to get something new out there, so they'll be new minis.
Okay. And actually I don't think it said yet. How many miniatures are we getting?
I think the stretch goal was for 10 Shadowrunner minis and 10 enemy and drone minis.
Okay, so 20 total.
I could just look at the screen rather than guess from memory also. Yep, 10 each. Woohoo, go memory.
Okay. And okay, so with 10 each, then that means you've got 10 different characters. I'm assuming there's 10 different characters in the box.
Yes.
Okay.
There will be.
So let's see. I'll bring this up because I've only asked Jason about this a couple of times. A Shadowrun miniatures line would be awesome. Is that in the works, Jason?
We have had very good discussions about various miniature potential in the future for Shadowrun.
Okay.
Pay
So
attention specifically next year for announcements.
well, wait. So I have to have you on the stream again?
No, I can announce things without you. I've got the whole internet I can access.
And how often do you do that?
Wait, they gave you access to the whole internet?
Yeah, I access the whole internet in my brain.
This explains so much.
Yeah. You want to know why Twitter X is the way it is? Yeah, I did that. I was really tired. That
I was saying, are you sure you want to claim responsibility for that?
It was a long day. Anyway, yes, I have a marketing person who can announce things too.
That's okay. I'll still have you back on, Jason. I still like you. It's fine.
Oh, thanks.
All right. So then, I don't think I asked this. What did you struggle with the most, Dylan, in making Takedown?
Getting Catalyst's attention.
3 months ago.
What'd you say, Jason?
Answers must come from before 3 months ago.
Getting Catalyst's attention was my answer.
Oh, I got your answer. So what happened 3 months ago?
I mean, they had this for some reason they were saying that there's this BattleTech Kickstarter that was taking a lot of their time. I don't know.
Yeah, so we've had a sequence of Kickstarters that we've planned, and it took a while for Takedown's turn to come up, and so that was a little bit longer wait than some people might have.
Got it.
No one in this chat, just some people.
Well, and actually, that's another fantastic question. So you guys did Edge Zone. Was that last year when you did the Kickstarter?
Yeah, November, I believe.
Okay, yeah, because from Kickstarter to delivery, that was 6 months. So
that was the goal.
So what are we looking at for Takedown? When is that? I mean, I saw the prototype at Gen Con. It looked like it was ready to go.
Yeah, not much longer. It will be sent to print before too long, but we do need to make some tweaks, and especially once we have all the stretch goals. So I don't think it'll be 6 months, but it won't be terribly long either. I don't want to commit to a time right now because various powers will come beat me, and then Dylan will act like I'm committing to a date, and he'll fill out all of his deliverable spreadsheet based on what I say now, and we can't have that.
Well, I'm seeing 2 dates.
I didn't bring it up.
I beat you to it.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing 2 dates on Kickstarter. The basic game says it'll deliver in September, but if you get the fancy version, the Kevlar
wait, September of 2023?
2024.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry,
you gave me a heart attack.
We'll not deliver September of this year.
But Mr. Johnson's Kevlar briefcase says that it's going to deliver in August of 2024. So,
if the Kickstarter people said that, then I believe them. Or I will yell at them, one of the two.
Or maybe both.
I will point out that this is one of those times where I get to use one of my favorite and most useful phrases. I'm just the designer.
Yeah. I would like to phone a friend.
Okay, I mean, so, but I mean, I'm assuming that most of the play testing has been done.
Yeah.
At this point, it's just kind of like polishing things,
Right.
Getting miniatures made.
Getting the mission synced up with the story, things like that.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure this we knew when it was coming out before we finalized the campaign, so we could sync it up. So there'll be a little bit of writing and things like that, but the timeline on the Kickstarter page is entirely reasonable.
Okay, that's very cool. I mean, because actually, yeah, coming out next year almost seems like it would be a big deal for Shadowrun.
There will be a big deal. We'll be very excited to have it out.
But almost like next year might be like a milestone.
An anniversary of some sort.
Right.
Part of our big 35th anniversary celebration. We got lots of stuff coming up.
Got it. Okay. So then I like going back and forth between you two. So Dylan, have you always been into Shadowrun, or only since you found out about these Catalyst guys that live nearby?
So the second TTRPG I ever played was Shadowrun. I somewhere have an old softback second edition FASA Shadowrun rulebook and the DMZ box set, also FASA.
Nice.
So I've been a Shadowrun fan for a while.
Okay.
Like for the longest time, one of my professional goals was to be able to write a Shadowrun story. So yeah, I've been a huge Shadowrun fan for a very long time.
Got it. All right. Then what did you I like trying to ask what you struggled with on this. What did you struggle most trying to get Shadowrun into this game?
I actually didn't struggle at all. And that's because, again, the game was started before I came on board, and it was designed from the ground up to be in a cyberpunk world and have people who have cyberware and other people who are magic users. So that was all baked in from the roots, and I think it really shows when you're playing the game.
Okay. Then what have I not asked about the? I mean, chat, help me out here. I need more questions. Normally we go a little, or normally I'm a little better at this, but I'll be honest. I'm struggling because I've got two people on screen, and I don't want to ignore anyone.
You should ask Jason which of his two runs went smoother.
I'll give you a hint. It's a cooperative game. Lauren was in one game. He wasn't in the second. Which one went smoother?
First off, real quick, Jason, tell Ainsley hi.
Ainsley!
Hello.
She appears as if summoned.
I was literally.
She was right over there brushing her hair.
Here.
No, she was waving, and I saw,
okay.
so I figured I would acknowledge her. Hi, AC. Nice to meet you.
All right, go get ready for bed.
Okay, you're done.
Yeah, remember
Okay.
what we were talking about pre-show, Brian?
Yes.
I identify.
Yeah, but she's 9.
Yeah, but I had another one.
Yeah, but you heard me arguing with the 19-year-old.
I'm saying I've had a 19-year-old who's who's a little headstrong sometimes.
Just a scotch. All right, so hold on. What was I supposed to ask Jason, Dylan?
I was saying which of his runs went smoother.
Okay, right. Well, so I guess then what is it that would make a takedown mission run smoother outside of not playing with Lauren?
Well, the thing I noticed about my second one is that since I understood basically how I was going to flow through a building, that helped. Even if it's not the same building, I know how my movement's going to go. I know what my role is in that scenario better. You know, I was playing the Decker in the second one, so I know I want to try to find vaults to get us some goodies. I know I want to try to get to the door to hack it because I'm going to be better at that than anyone else. So with that experience, I can move through it easier and take less time, and that's very critical.
Okay. So Glenn wants to know what the objectively best character is. And would you, and I'm actually going to, piggyback onto that. Would knowing the Shadowrun archetypes ahead of time make it easier to play them? Or do you think that it's just like, nope, as long as you can read the card, you're going to be able to figure it out?
I think it's a little easier, but go ahead, Dylan.
I was just going to say, I think at least having a general idea of the archetypes is going to be helpful in terms of picking a character you will want to play. Because objectively, who is the best character strongly depends upon your playstyle. If you're a murder machine, you're going to want to play the Street Sam. If you want to try to smooth through and not set off any alarms, you want to play the face, right? And you're going to find the face to be the best character. The other weird thing about it is that it's best for what? Because if the face, for example, has the ability to get out of conflict very easily when they're in the same space with enemies. That's kind of what they excel at. But then if you put them in the van, they're also really good at moving enemies around to try to make it a little bit smoother for everybody else. And so it really strongly depends upon your play style and how you want to go about that. And not only that, the mission design. One of the things that I mentioned to a couple of people is that we have an alarm tracker, and the alarm goes off when it's triggered. And sometimes that means you fail the mission. Usually not. Usually there's other things that happen. And it's a tracker with like 30 pips on it. And most missions, it usually starts around 10, sometimes 0. There's one mission where it starts on 29. And you don't want to bring the Street Samurai in on that mission, because when the Street Samurai, every time you kill a person, the alarm goes up. And so it's like you're telling the Street Samurai, okay, leave your weapons at home. You're not killing anyone on this one, because you're trying to get through without even having it tick up once.
Got it. So actually, speaking of design, Hal wants to know, does the designer get to write in special rules that allows the designer to get extra actions?
Absolutely not. I take too much pride in that. One of the, no. However, the designer does always have the optional rule of changing things randomly when running a demo to make it more interesting.
That's fair.
That rule's in there.
Can't say I've never been in that spot before. So another one from Glenn. Okay, so it says 1 to 4 players. How does it play at lower player counts?
So it's an interesting mix. So first off, one thing that is very important to be aware of. Well, 2 things, sorry. One is that when you are playing solo, you will still be playing 2 runners. So there will always be at least 2 runners in the game. You'll just be controlling both. Now, also, when you play solo, you don't have a mastermind. It seems kind of obvious to say that because you can't have hidden information from yourself, or at least I don't know many people who can. But the mastermind role is optional. The mastermind is not something that you need. The game is deliberately to be designed so that you don't need to have a mastermind. And in fact, as Jason mentioned briefly, on one of our streams, the mastermind can always go in on the mission. And so because of that, just baked into the rules from the get-go, mastermind is completely optional. So knowing that, let's now talk about, okay, well, how is it different whether you have 2 runners in there and no mastermind versus if you have like 4 runners in there, or if you have 3 runners and a mastermind. The one thing that you will find is that the game is a little self-balancing, because a lot of things key off of how many runners are seen. And so what winds up happening is that with a smaller team, you're less likely to be seen, you're less likely to have the alarm level creep up, and you're less likely to have enemies responding to you, which actually works as an odd self-balancing mechanic, because of the fact that if you imagine it being played out perfectly, it still takes you can't daisy chain your movement, right? So it's not like having 4 runners lets you get through the entire run faster. And so when you combine with the fact that you're less likely to be seen and you have more time to plan your actions because you still have 2 minutes, but now you only have 2 players instead of 4. And so it has a lot of this weird self-balancing mechanics in it. Sorry, this is a really long answer. So how does it play with fewer players? You get a little bit more time to think, not a lot. You're less likely to trigger the alarm, which means stealth is easier, but obviously taking out guards is harder. And the final thing is that some missions do have player counts on them. Like, for example, there's one mission where you're supposed to hit a convoy with 1 or 2 players. There's only 1 vehicle in the convoy. With 3 or 4 players, there's 2 vehicles in the convoy. So sometimes missions will have certain setup things like that, dependent on the number of players.
Got it. Okay. So then also a corollary I would ask, are there plans, or is it even quote unquote possible to scale the game up to say 5 or 6 players?
I'm looking to Jason for permission to share.
Share away.
Are you sure?
Go for it.
All right. You heard it. I have permission.
Yeah, blame me. It's fine.
So we are developing a mode of the game that goes up to 8 players.
Oh.
Now, this will require a second box, because what we are doing is we are designing a PvP style of the game where you have 2 runner teams that are both competing for the same objective to see whoever can achieve it first.
Okay.
So like 2 teams hacking into, like 2 runner teams got hired to hack into the same building on the same night. They both want the pay data, and it's a race to see who can get it and get out first.
Okay. No. So first off, that's fantastic. But especially because, being able to, like you'll have players, you've got a group of 6 and 3 people buy the game. Well, you're only going to use 1 copy. Being able to add more in, I think is fantastic. But to kind of clarify a little bit, what if you wanted to just play on the same team, but you've got a 5th player that night or a 6th player?
What I will say, the official response is it has not been tested, but feel free to try it.
Okay.
So because of the nature of the game, it's not like a worker placement style game where we need to worry about the number of places and those need to change. And it's not like a dungeon crawler where the number of enemies that spawn or the size of the board changes based on the number of players. So with the rules as is, it in theory could support any number of players, but realize that your timer's not going to go up. Maybe you try creating an optional rule that gives you another 30 seconds for every mission.
Right.
You can try it, but you will need more dice because the game does not have enough dice to support like 6 players. But assuming you do all of that, feel free to try it. But I will say that it's not tested. I have no idea how it would go.
Okay. Then actually, speaking of the timer, Full Metal Dragon wants to know, can we play without the timer?
Absolutely.
I was gonna say, I assume so. I just think it would just, lose all the tension.
Well, and that's the caveat I will give you. You can play without the timer, but you might, especially if you play a lot of games, you might find the missions a little bit easy, because they're deliberately designed to be a little bit easy without the timer, because the timer makes things a lot harder. You're not always making perfect decisions, right? And so we need to scale the missions to put them a little bit easier. So like in a perfect world, we want about, 70% success rate, maybe 80% success rate with the timer. And what that would probably go to is like a 90 to 95% success rate without it. So if you're not as into games, or you're introducing people to games, playing out without the timer is a great way to do it because it's not going to be as stressful or as challenging. But if you are wanting a challenge, you might find that lacking without the timer.
Got it. So like scenario 1, play without the timer, figure out how things move, how they work together. And then for the rest of the campaign, put the timer in and watch it all go to hell.
We actually say in the rules, we strongly recommend that your first couple of turns, or maybe even the first mission, you play without the timer to make sure you know how everything works. We do specifically call that out because it's really important. And one of the things that, and I might mention this in the rule book because as a call out, that I found really useful in the demo was when someone had a rules question, I laid the timer flat so that then I could answer the rules question and it wasn't taking away time. And I think that might be something we want to put in the rule book, Jason.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
See, I'm helping. No, I mean, I like the sound of all of it. I mean, I have, oh my gosh, I don't even want to talk about how many different dungeon crawls I have. But I like what I've seen with Takedown so far. I also really like the idea of getting the miniatures. Just because I do a couple of live streams a month, or not a month, a week. Literally just sitting here painting miniatures, and for some reason people hang out with me in chat. I don't get it, but whatever. So I really, really want to paint those up. Actually, that's another thing I want to ask. The missions, the way that you're okay, actually a couple of things. Gotta love these ADHD squirrels. So you said one of the missions is like you're raiding a convoy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming not all of the missions are interior setups. Like I've seen
Correct.
on most of the like most of the pictures, it's like here's a building or a few rooms put together. So
correct. So the game comes with 19 map tiles, which are double-sided. And some of them are building interiors, some of them are exteriors and roads. A couple of them are, or one of them's a rooftop. A couple are underground tunnels. And so there's a lot of variability there. And things change slightly when you're outdoors. Really only line of sight changes when you're outdoors, but it just makes sense that it changes. When you're standing on the street, you can see a lot further than when there's like a wall in front of you. Yeah, that's the game has a lot of flexibility with those dual-sided tiles and how we combine them to make the different mission maps.
Okay. No, I'll be honest. I like the sound of all of it. To just put it simply. So anything else that we should know about Takedown?
The Kickstarter's running right now.
The Kickstarter. That's fair.
That seems like an important thing to share.
That's very true. My original plan was actually to have Jason on before Gen Con, but I actually think it's a little better now. Oh, by the way, folks, there is a link to the Kickstarter in the description. If if you are interested after all of this nonsense, you have a link to get there. Let's see. Glenn says it might be worth saying that about the map tiles on the campaign. What's there makes it seem like there are maybe 10 map tiles.
Yes, I will be addressing that. Thank you. That's a good point.
So, yeah, the what's on the box just says map tiles and shows like 7 pieces. So saying that there's 19 might be a little better of an idea.
There will be plenty of map tiles.
All right. So what's something that you put into the game, Dylan, that people might not necessarily catch? Like you're like, I'm going to put this in because it's fun or it makes me laugh, but unless I tell people, they may not necessarily pick that up. Now Dylan's like, ooh, I'm going to do this.
Do that.
Like, I know a lot of creatives do that. I don't know why. That's never been something that I've done a lot of. What I will say is that, and I think Jason can see why I'm going to say this now. It is actually counterintuitive and really helpful to sometimes blow up doors instead of picking the locks. And that's something that I don't think people will realize, even like the second or third time they play, how useful of a strategy that can be. Because, yeah, like if you're not going a full stealth approach, it's actually, in my opinion, a much better strategy to just blow the doors down.
So you're not you're not emphasizing that everybody be as sneaky as possible in this game.
The number of times that I saw players get stuck behind a locked door because a guard went through and locked the door that they previously thought was going to stay unlocked is pretty high.
Especially
okay.
If you can't roll dice to save your life.
That sounds like me. All right, but you didn't like insert yourself as one of the characters, or
no, that's never been my thing. Tommy is in there.
What did you say, Jason?
I said that's Tommy's job.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I will say I did think about putting my favorite Shadowrun character that I've created in there, but it does not work story-wise. There is no reason she would be in there as a runner. She actually works for Ares, so it really doesn't make sense.
Not even as like just like a little piece of fiction to introduce the scenario.
It just I thought about it. It didn't work.
Got it. Okay. Well, the game's not out yet, so I might address this question with you again later as far as what insert you put in there.
Sounds good.
So as a line developer, Jason, what's been your favorite part about this project?
Playing it. It's always, there's always hassles involved with trying to get everything lined up for production and trying to do all the editing and make sure all the things are lined up. But then when you can just sit down and actually play it and have some of the final or close to final components and see how pretty and fun it is, and you're like, okay, this is why we're doing this. This is going to be fun to get in people's hands, and that gives you the motivation to keep going through the other more clerical parts to make sure people have it to play, because it's a lot of fun.
Okay. If there was something that Dylan could have added, but maybe it just didn't work, what would you have wanted in the game?
Oh heavens! A filled out spreadsheet of deliverables that I don't have to work on.
I mean, I could put dates in there, and we could just say it's good.
Yeah, and then you have to keep the dates by yourself.
That's fine.
No, I mean, I think it's got all the key Shadowrun elements. So it's really tough for me to come up with something. It's tough to, on the fly, try to pull apart a good game design and reconstruct it. I could maybe spitball, but I don't know if it would work with what's in there, so it's all good. Or
No,
more
that
nerfs, as Glenn says. Always more nerfs, sure.
yeah, more.
A My Little Pony character.
If you'd like that too, that's fine.
We'll just have to talk to Hasbro about the license. But no, I mean it's one of those things like I look at it from this side, not having even tried to design anything like this, and it just seems overwhelming. So what is it that keeps you motivated when you're trying to design these things?
What keeps me motivated is I always want to do something different. Every single game that I've designed, I can look at and say, that's different, that's different, that's different. Like, I always want to do something that's different. We actually sat down at one point and figured out how many different games I played. And this was actually a year ago, so the number's gone up. And we estimated it at about 1,400 different board games that I've played. And so I have a very, very large library of games in my head and game experiences, I should say. And I always want to try to do something unique, whether that's a combination that I have of mechanics I haven't seen before, a new way of doing a mechanic, or like a new twist on something. Like that's, I love, to me, that's a puzzle. And I love finding it and then making it work, right? Because it's one thing to think up an idea like, oh, that hasn't been done. Okay, cool. Now, how do we make it work and make it fun and make it enjoyable and make it engaging? And to me, that's a puzzle, and I really like it. I mean, it's probably not a surprise that as a kid, and even to this day, I really liked math and I really like logic puzzles. And it's just getting all of those pieces to just click just makes me happy.
And what was it that clicked in Shadowrun for you? What was the thing that you're like, I pulled this off?
In Shadowrun or in Takedown?
Takedown.
Okay.
Sorry.
Really, it is the mastermind. Like, just that whole element to me is just like it's. I am so proud of that mechanic and so proud of how it works in practice. Like, it's excellent. And yeah, I'm super proud of it.
Okay. Let's see. Maybe this will give you an idea for something next. A Shadowrun Euro game focused on players playing the mega corporate CEOs using the Shadowrun world for their own personal game.
Yeah, pitch something like that. Why don't you?
That was the first game that I had mentioned that I threw in front of Catalyst.
I was going to say, I believe we already have that game. Yeah.
No, that is actually the very first game I designed and pitched in front of Jason. And it was all around, you could steal someone's company by like stealing their stock or devaluating it and taking over. And you could actually hire runners to like go do things to mess with other people. Like it, that is literally the first game I designed.
Got it. So acquire the Shadowrun edition.
Yeah, so we actually had a name for a game. We had a rule set. We played it through a few times. We didn't like the rule set too much. And then Dylan came with his alternate rule set. We're like, okay, that's an improvement. So maybe we could do that. But then we said, well, we haven't released a full Shadowrun board game. Do we want the first board game out of the chute to be corporate focused, or do we want it to be runner focused? So then we've gone runner focused. And the possibility of getting back to that model still exists, but I can only do so many things at once.
I mean, I'm hearing excuses, Jason.
Yes,
yeah, you're a line developer. Just
the
make it
reason
happen.
you're hearing excuses is because I'm making them.
I mean, own it, right?
Yeah. So then we'll kind of spin off of that. So you want to do your corporate game. You've now done, I guess this is your second Shadowrunner board game. What's next?
With Catalyst or in general?
Okay. Do you have an idea for the next Shadowrun game? We'll start there.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell me what it is.
Not currently, no.
Okay.
We do. Not for him.
Got it. So they've bypassed you already, Dylan. I hope you enjoyed your time here.
It's a good thing I wasn't working on one then.
See, the system works.
Then, okay. You don't have to answer this question, but I'm going to. Well, no, it's not a bad question. It's just, but like, people don't want to give away their secrets. So if you say, "Oh, I've got this idea, but I'm not talking about it," that's a totally valid answer. I'm not going to worry about it. So if Jason gave you just carte blanche, do whatever you want, what would be the next Shadowrun game you made?
Yeah, I would have to think about that I can't give you something off the cuff. And that's partially just because of the way that my brain works and the way that I think of designs. Because like I said, mechanics and doing something new and different is really, really what I want to do. So I'd have to think about what new thing I would want to pull in and what different thing I would want to do. And that takes me some time to kind of come up and think about and sketch out ideas for. So I unfortunately, honestly, can't answer that one.
No, that's perfectly fine. Like, hey, I set it up saying you don't have to answer it, so there's no pressure. But
so just a quick sideline, just to maybe build off of what Dylan was saying there a little bit. When we were working on SR6, we got a much better code name for it than the SR5 code name. The SR6 code name was Project White Stripes because it was playing off of a comment Jack White made when he was saying why the White Stripes were the way they were. And that is because if he limited the band to just guitar and drums, that gave him a box to work in, and then he could try to be creative within that box. If he came to it with just all possibilities, it seemed too wide open to him. And he couldn't focus if he didn't have a box to work in. And so the White Stripes were designed to give him a box to work in. And so when we started SR6, we gave ourselves a box to work in. We said, this needs to be 300 pages. It needs to be simpler. So figure out how to do Shadowrun that feels like Shadowrun in 300 pages. And so it gave us a box to work in. And I think sometimes for designing a game, if you just ask a wide open question, like, what's the thing you want to do? It's tough to come up with because there's so many things we want to do. But if I came up to Dylan and said, okay, could you come up with an idea for, let's just riff off what Hal just said, for an arcology builder board game that has a novel mechanic, he might not come up with it instantly, but that would give him a box to work in, and that might help focus the creativity rather than feeling too wide open.
Got it. Well, how about this for a box? Arcology Builder, the board game. Hoard resources and force your competing structures to wallow in sinless squatting failure.
Is that?
I want you to actually build the structures.
Yeah.
Build them, and then when you take something out of their foundation, you literally take it out of their foundation. Like reverse Jenga, you're trying to get their structure to fall.
See, once you have a structure, Dylan comes up with ideas.
A board game based on the old Renraku Shutdown adventure. Do you build the Renraku arcology?
I love that adventure. It's a great scenario.
I think we're giving Dylan ideas. This is when we get Renraku the Jenga game, we'll know we hit something. All right, so then Jason, I guess you know what, we'll kind of play off of what I asked Dylan. As the line developer, obviously you can approve, quote unquote, whatever you want. What do you think is missing for Shadowrun that you would like to see next? Or at least sometime in the future?
Well, there's the thing that we'll announce next year or later this year. So that'll be helpful.
You're not going to spoil it? Aw. Rude.
Can only get myself in so much trouble in a day. And then just for their RPG line, one fun thing that I don't think we've had, so filling in a gap that previous editions haven't had, is that, you know, we've always had a core magic book, we've always had a core combat book, core rigor, core decker. We have not really had a core rule book for faces or social characters. So that's a gap I want to fill in. So we'll work on that next year. So that's going to be just a fun adventure to figure out what that book looks like.
Okay. All right. So Dylan, I do still want your input, but I am going to ask a few more questions more on the RPG side. So don't think I'm ignoring you, but I do need to ask a few of these questions. All right. So All Ones asked a while back, okay, Jason's going to love this because I know I've asked him like 10 different times, but this way we'll have it on record for other people that are asking the question. Any plans on translating the German and French only releases into English? Oh,
maybe.
So if there's silence, I can't fill it with anything useful.
I've had discussions about that. Sometimes translation is surprisingly expensive, but there have been some offers that might make it less expensive. So I just need to work with those offers.
Okay. So I know that with the new Berlin book, I know we spoke last week and you said that there wasn't going to be a Berlin book coming soon. Are there thoughts about doing a Berlin book at some point in the future?
Possibly. The biggest problem is when we do single setting published source books, they don't sell great.
Got it. Okay. So
the market hasn't been there for them.
Is that why you've kind of shifted it towards, putting it into the campaign books?
Exactly. And then also sometimes doing setting stuff as ebook. So maybe as an ebook, but then that changes some of the financial structure too. So that's been the problem on that, is that, and it's funny because almost every time like I do interviews or whatever, people are always asking for setting books. So if it was just based on the questions I received in chats like this, I would absolutely do setting books because people are always asking for them, but then we put them out and they don't do great. So
you mean like, say, a source PDF about Louisville?
Right. For example, someone was thinking of that.
Yeah.
But as a PDF, they do fine. So usually we can do it as a PDF.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Glenn asks, what is the reaction to Hollow Streets been? Actually, let's split that up. What has your reaction to Hollow Streets been, and what do you think the community's reaction to it has been?
Well, my reaction is, entirely positive because I've been pushing for it for well over a year trying to get it done. We really wanted to have it available to people as soon as I heard that it was a possibility. We tried to get it out there and just, things kept getting in the way. But it's out there, so I'm really happy that it's a chance for the community to come up with their ideas and put them out there and sell it if they want to. So I think it's great to have more community involvement. And it looks like there is good community involvement. I know several freelancers are doing their own things there, and other people are putting publications up. I regularly see new stuff going up and new sales happening. So it continues to be an active part of the Shadowrun community. So that's all good to me.
Got it. And management is happy with the numbers and the business side of it. So
yeah, I mean, and it wasn't really done for the business side. It's not ever probably going to be a major profit center, especially with BattleTech doing what it's doing right now. But as far as our people posting things and as a community getting involved, that's happening. And so that's what we wanted to happen. So they're positive about that.
Got it. Is there anything in particular that you've been excited about seeing from it?
I've been excited to see a variety of Anarchy things just because I really like Shadowrun Anarchy to keep moving, and I'm glad the community's supporting it. And just the diversity of ideas up there. It's interesting to see what people think needs to happen in Shadowrun and see how they approach it. And so I like getting different opinions and different angles on things. I do need to do a little bit more reading just to catch up because the past month has been not great for that sort of thing.
Why? What else was going on? No.
There was the thing and the other thing, and then I tried to travel in the middle of it. So yeah, it was great.
Got it. Let's see. And actually, here's a related question. Setting books could be softback books, even with black and white interior. Is that actually going to be a possibility, or have you made the decision that all Shadowrun books, like printed books, are going to be full color, glossy pages, hardback, moving forward?
It could be. This, as it turns out, given the printer we're using right now, the savings on that are not tremendous, especially the savings on trying to switch to black and white art. Because black and white art isn't just a matter of taking your color artists and having them make black and white. It's a fairly different skill set. So we need to recruit more black and white artists and form a new pool of artists to make good black and white art for that book. And so that would be putting more demands on the art director. So that's a little tricky. And given all that, the savings in print costs is actually not that high.
Got it.
Our
okay.
book printer, the one reason we use them is they check every box. They're always on time. They make quality books, and their price is very, very reasonable.
I mean, you put out a core rule book at 344 pages, so you kind of broke that rule there, Jason.
That's only because of the index and the Berlin content. And we're blaming Oz for writing extra Berlin content. He didn't keep to 12 pages.
Well, we'll get into that in a second. But the point I want to make is that, I mean, it's a $50 core book. Wizards just announced, oh, hey, all of our books are going up, 20%. And by the way, you have to buy 3 of them. So, the fact that you kept it to $50.
Yeah, so, I like to keep the entry point not too burdensome.
Well, and actually, that bringing it back to Takedown a little bit, what's the retail cost on Takedown going to be? Anyone?
Yes,
I can check the Kickstarter.
Yeah,
I'm assuming the Kickstarter is not discounted prices.
Correct.
Okay, so then you've got a retail cost of 70.
70, yeah, and that was mainly because of the die cuts. We talked a lot about that. The amount of die cut tiles and maps and everything is a little pricey.
Okay, well, and actually that's actually one thing that I thought. Man, the ADHD is all over the place, but it's a question that I'm glad I remembered. The fact that you went with standees instead of miniatures out the gate. Who made that decision?
That was in production because that's a cost decision. If we default include all the miniatures, that greatly increases the cost of the game. We'd have to go probably about 100 if we had all the minis in there.
Got it.
These are expensive.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely they are. I was going to say, Dylan, I mean, were you disappointed that they didn't do miniatures or like in the box or,
So there's a joke inside Lynvander that I don't understand how things should look, that I am not a visual person, that I am a word and numbers person. Like my first game prototypes used to be on Excel spreadsheets. So to me, I'm like, it's fine. Do the mechanics work? Awesome. That's what I care about. Plus, as a gamer, I have a lot of plastic in the other room. I'm good with standees.
Well, and I was actually thinking about that recently because, like especially once Cool Mini came on the market, like everything has been miniatures, more miniatures, bigger miniatures, crazier miniatures. And I got to thinking about it because, like I said, I'll do my painting stream. Sometimes I'm painting up stuff for a board game. Sometimes it's for an actual miniatures game. And I got to thinking about it. It's like these board games don't need all of that. They're cool, but like looking at the standees, like, you've got the enemies, and they've actually got game information on them. So, you can do a lot more that you can't do on a plastic miniature, at least not easily.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say would disappoint me if it went that way, just because it does feature back into the mechanics, is if it went from standees to tokens. Because since it is a game where timing is important, you need things that you can grab quickly and easily. And sometimes it's hard to pick up tokens, which is why I do feel strongly that standees are necessary over tokens. But the difference between minis and standees, to me, it doesn't make a difference to me personally as the designer or as a gamer.
I do want to share a quote from Dylan from an email just earlier today where we were discussing the looks of the minis for the enemies. And all he said was, from my perspective, all of these are currently stat blocks. That's what the enemies are. They're numbers. You all do your visual crap.
You don't want to give us a sneak preview of the miniatures?
If I had one, I would give it to you.
Aw.
Wait, the game has miniatures?
It will.
I thought it just had stat blocks.
There's this whole.
If you want a sneak preview of the stat blocks, I can tell you that like the level 3 enemy has 5 health, moves 3 spaces, rolls 3 dice, and hits on 2 different symbols.
Well, now if we're not buying the game just on that alone, I don't know what's wrong with us.
All you people who need pictures, you just got the game right there. What are you asking for?
No, I think it's a very interesting dynamic. It's like, I mean, you put in the 3D objects, which I'm assuming are just like, cardboard kind of slide it all together kind of stuff.
Yes.
No, maybe okay. But
again, that's helpful and important because from a mechanic standpoint, you need to be able to quickly pick them up and put them out. And so that's why it's actually even beyond the visual appeal, which we've already covered, I know nothing about. It's valuable from a mechanic standpoint because of the time limit.
Yeah, no, well, okay, adding that into it, I absolutely agree. But I don't mind having a 3-dimensional representation, even if it's just a 2-dimensional piece standing upright. I think it at least, pulls you into the immersion a little bit more. So then trying to think of any other questions that we've had. Anything else you guys want to bring up? As I look like an idiot.
Not much more.
Not that comes to my mind. I think this is great. Thank you for having me.
You're absolutely welcome. As we get closer and I actually, get to actually get the game in hand, because I'm asked Jason, I end up getting everything anyways. It's kind of like I want him to keep his job. For some weird reason. Let's see. Oh, Paul wants to know, what is the next book after Berlin?
So Scotophobia will be hitting stores at the same time as Berlin, so that's the plot book. And then I believe that ties into Glenn's question after, because the Critter book should be the next one in November. The book will be called Wildlife and will be hitting stores in November.
Okay.
So watch for that.
Anything else hitting this year?
Nope. Once we hit November, that's the last one. Then you have to wait all the way till January to get another Shadowrun book.
Okay. Are we telling what it is yet?
Sure. It's called Falling Point. It's a threats book. So following up on some of the plot lines and embellishing some plot lines and adding in some others that we haven't touched on recently. So 10 people or organizations you should know about, including the new Ares CEO will be profiled. Updates on everyone's favorite group, the Humanist Poly Club, and stuff like that.
Okay. Glenn actually does ask another question. Are there any source books that are currently out of print?
I don't think so. I think they are all okay right now. SR6 had just gone out. That's why the Berlin had come up. But I haven't looked at the warehouse spreadsheet for a couple of weeks. But last I checked, we weren't about to run out.
Okay. When you're doing reprints, are you adding the errata in?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then that answers that. Paul does want to know with the critter book, or wildlife, I should say, are there going to be sharks with laser beams?
I don't think there's quite that, but the aquatic creatures are still very well represented with their whole entire chapter. And the Megalodon art is really cool.
I'll give you a stat block form for Takedown.
Yeah, there's about, I think there's more than 50 critter images in this book. So there's a lot of cool critter art.
Yeah, I have said it before, Jason, and it probably annoys you, and I will keep saying it. The Shadowrun books need more art. Not a ton, but there is a wall of text that my ADHD brain just screams at.
50 plus critter images. So you get that wildlife book and enjoy.
Okay, I will do so. Let's see. And Hal says you can make laser sharks with Body Shop.
It's true. You can.
Okay. So there we go. Paul would also like to know what is the new Ares CEO's story?
Well, I mean, that's why we wrote a whole 10,000 word chapter in Falling Point so you could read it.
Actually, that's one thing that I didn't touch on with you yet, Dylan. You said you've been writing for Shadowrun. What have you contributed to?
Nothing. I just say I write for them.
Nothing of note.
Okay.
I have written, let me see. I can actually look it up real quick if you give me just a couple of moments.
Got some novels out there.
So I have written a novel. I have written 1, 2, 3 novellas. I was the first story in The Frame Job. And then I've written about 6 or 7 short stories in a bunch of different anthologies.
Okay. Very cool. So folks, go check out Dylan's books, not just Takedown. Have you contributed to any of the actual source books?
No, that I maybe. Sorry, it starts to blend together after a while. And where the maybe comes in, I can tell you for sure I have not contributed anything outside of fiction. I do remember there was one source book where I thought I had a good idea for a story, and I don't remember if Catalyst went with that or if they went with somebody else's story. So I'm just blanking. I'd have to look it up because, like I said, as you just heard, I've written a lot of Shadowrun. So I don't remember if I've written any of the fiction that's in some of the books, but I've never written any of the prose in there.
Okay. What's your next book coming up?
So I actually don't have one currently. I took.
No.
Oh.
No. I meant.
I'll shut up now.
No. That was your question, Dylan. I was giving Jason crap for not assigning you a book. No.
Oh, okay.
So first of all, I'm not the fiction line developer. It's someone else that no one has ever heard of.
I took time off of my writing career because between day job and Lynvander Studios, I didn't really have time. I actually was slated to write another Shadowrun novel and voluntarily pulled out of it because I was not satisfied with the quality of the work because of how many directions I was being pulled.
Okay, fair enough. Then I guess we'll put this question over to Jason. What is coming up for the book line?
Are we talking about the game book line or the fiction book line?
I'm assuming the fiction book line because we already covered that we got the core book, Scotophobia, Wildlife, and the other book that you mentioned that comes out in January. Falling Point, that one. Anyway, so I'm assuming novels.
Yeah, that is John Helfer's territory. So he's got that. It looks like we haven't gotten it out yet. I don't know if Aaron Rosenberg's book, Base Retrieval, has come out yet, but that looks like that should be coming soon.
Got it. So there is. So
and we got Michael Sierravella novel coming up not too long after that.
Got it. So hopefully at least one more novel this year, maybe two.
That's what I would hope.
Okay. Then all right, folks. I think I am out of questions this time. I hope it wasn't, too distressing, me being scatterbrained all over the place. But if if anyone gets any last minute questions in, let us, do so. And so Jason, anything we should know about Shadowrun coming up outside of
I think we've covered most of it. So just, go out there, have fun, however you want to play, find a way to play Shadowrun, and we'd love you to be in the Sixth World.
All right. And Dylan, any parting thoughts?
Check out the gameplay videos of Takedown and the streams of it being played live. And if it seems like your type of game, I really hope you'll back it, and I really hope you'll enjoy it. And yeah.
Okay. Jason, I actually am going to throw this one in real quick. More Shadowrun merch. I went to the website to try and buy a t-shirt because this is the only one I have, and this isn't even from Catalyst or Sixth World. This was from Hairbrained from the video game years ago.
I think we will be getting the Shadowrun mugs up on the website if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but I need a t-shirt.
For Gen Con, we had these really cool ceramic glazed mugs made. And they're two colors and neat looking, but they also have logos on them. One has the Shadowrun S on it. The others are corporate mugs for Seder Krupp, As Technology, Dockwagon, and Aries. They're all Employee of the Month mugs. And they have little slogans like As Technology says, "Thank you for your sacrifice." Aries says that you're a high caliber employee. Seder Krupp says this mug counts as your bonus. And Dockwagon says they bleed, you lead. So
Nice.
If you want your special corporate employee of the month mug, those should be available on the website before too long.
Okay, that actually does remind me of one thing. And then Glenn's got another question. Speaking of corporations, you did the high rollers dice, but only used 5 of the corporations. Is there going to be a high rollers 2 with the rest of the top 10?
I don't know if we do high rollers. We did have some dice at Gen Con. They were not corporate associated, but they were really cool looking, black and purple and black and green. And so I don't know if we're going to go with those on the website or what the plan for distribution of those are, but we did get some new dice that are really cool looking.
Okay. I'm still voting for high rollers 2 to get the rest of the top 10.
Yeah, let me see if I have my set while you look at the next question.
Okay. So Glenn wants to know, how is Roll20 going? Is it going to continue?
Yes, it is going to continue. It's going well. I heard, I believe just yesterday that Firing Squad's about done. So look for Firing Squad in the near future.
Cool.
All right, I don't know where I put the dice.
That's fine. It was just one of those things that I got them and I liked them. And then it's like, wait, there's there's 10 AAA corps, but there's only 5 sets of dice. So we're missing 5 of the AAA corps.
If it helps, I played with the new dice at Gen Con and they rolled well, which is weird for me. And yes, Paul, eventually we plan to get all the core books on Roll20 and some missions.
Perfect. All right. Well, folks, I'm going to go ahead and end it here because we got a couple of minutes. Dylan, don't go anywhere. We're going to chat afterwards just for a couple of minutes. But everybody, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much to Jason for being here, even though it's a couple of weeks later than we had planned. And Dylan, thank you so much for joining us at like basically the last minute. I was an idiot. And somebody in my chat said, "Oh, you should talk to the developer from the Kickstarter too." I'm like, "Oh, that actually makes sense." So I'm really glad you could join us. It was a pleasure to meet you. But everybody, hit the like button. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. But otherwise, I'm going to hit the end broadcast. We'll, end at some weird face at some point. But otherwise,